27 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Thursday morning. We have had in our studio before, and this goes way back, many years. Terry Tibbetts has been with us before. Terry typically is in our studio because he introduces us to some really fascinating people, and he is about to do that again today, although the people he's going to talk about are not here. However, you might get to meet them on Monday if I have my notes right here. This is what it says on my notes. It says more than 40 years have passed since the Vietnam War ended for the United States, but the grief of the loved ones and friends of the 46,000 men who died will never fully vanish. Vietnam War was a conflict which lost more and more public support as time passed. Recent information has come to light that spotlights the exact when, how, and why that support began to unravel. Two retired Army officers and Florida residents who had direct ties to that battle will share their spellbinding story on Monday, February 24th at 2 p.m. I apologize. I don't normally read my intros, but this is just such, I mean, I couldn't do any better than this, so I'm using it. They'll be at Top of the World on February 24th, which is Monday. My jury duty day, by the way.
That's right.
At 2 p.m. as part of its Master of the Possibilities program. And I'm going to stop reading and introduce you to Terry Tibbetts. He's one of us, Robin. He was on the radio and TV up in the New England area. Would you say Maine? Did you say Maine? Maine? Yes. 25 years as a sportscaster, TV and radio. The Battle of Ong Fan is what we're going to talk about. How it is the moment in history when the Vietnam War suddenly started to begin to lose public support. And let's find out about this from Terry. Good morning, Terry. How you doing?
Oh, well, I'm doing fine. Glad to be here again.
You know, I probably know this or should know this. Are you a veteran? Were you?
No, I have a hearing problem. It has exacerbated over the years, but back then it was marginal, but it turned out that the draft board didn't want me, as it turned out. I didn't have good enough hearing.
But you have served us in many ways other than through the military, obviously, and clearly have great respect for the military.
Absolutely.
You've brought us some amazing guests in the past, and we appreciate that. And you lived in Maine. You retired to Florida, which is how you came to know us, right? Because you lived in the area?
Yeah, I lived in Maine. I grew up in Maine, lived there most of my life, moved to New Hampshire, my wife and I did, in 2000. So I spent 13 years there. And then my mother moved down to Ocala Palms, and retired there. Right. And she wanted my brother and me to come down and join her, so we eventually did. My mother passed away 2 years ago tomorrow at the age of 97.
Wow.
But my brother and I and our families live here at Ocala Palms. So
during your years of broadcasting, I'm guessing that was during the Vietnam War, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So even though you were doing sports, this must have been heavy what was it like? Was it like this? Was your station like this? Was it different? Do you have a lot of people around you, or was it pretty much a one-man show?
It was pretty much the way that you have your
pretty much the way we do it.
Yeah, set up. I was a DJ. I did. Played records.
You did? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I did.
Okay.
I did sales. I did just about everything
okay.
in radio. And it was the thing different about broadcasting and the news media between now and yesterday was that I was also a public relations person for a number of years for the state of Maine. And my job was to educate the people through the media as to what we were doing for the folks in the state of Maine. And I could walk into any newspaper, any radio, TV station, go see the person I wanted to see, and get myself or whoever the person was that was skilled in that area on the air. Newspapers, nowadays you can't even get in the front door. You have to call in somebody, and they vanish.
Well, Robin and I have a way of getting people on the air, though. So.
I've been on your show, with other people a number of times. Right. I can't get on anywhere else. You people are great.
So let me ask you this, and I'm glad that you expanded on your broadcasting experience, because that's part of what I want to talk about. Because public support, whether you're trying to promote the state of Maine or anything, or trying to promote an anti-message, like an anti-war message, that all has to happen through the media.
Yep.
whenever we would watch it, Robin and I are a little bit younger than you, so we would remember probably John Lennon, you know, showing up in fatigues, I guess you called them, right? And not a soldier, not even an American, and protesting the war. And of course, we thought that was great because we didn't like the war. We loved John Lennon. Yep. A lot of people who were older than us didn't like it. They found it disrespectful.
Yep.
But we didn't know any better.
Yep. One very quick little thing. While I was at Indiana University getting my master's degree in broadcasting, I'm walking down, it's summertime, and I happened to be there, walking down the hall of the broadcasting building. This young black man and an instructor come the other way. And I get closer, and the instructor says, "I'd like to have you meet James Meredith. He's here to meet some people, and we're going to do a radio." I mean, this was the James Meredith,
wow.
who I was shocked,
wow.
you know, to hear 2 months later that he was shot.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I was able to meet him, you know, and you had free access, and
wow. So from the media perspective, and media is like, you know, we don't want to believe this, but it's almost like the tail wagging the dog effect, you know. Yeah. So were you pressured at all to express opinions on the war?
No, I wasn't that close to it. I reported. It was rip and read in those days, although I went to school in great part, to learn how to read a news item and reword it and retype it so that it was better. The UPI stuff that came across, we were told, hey, you know, this is got a lot of mediocre stuff. We want you to put this into words that people can understand and relate to. So when I did my research on this story that I wrote, I've got to believe that my professor was smiling down at me, you know, from up above, saying, good job, because I learned how to listen or read and really take a look at what's being said or read or written and say, is that the truth? Well, something sounds a little weird here. Or somebody says something and the other person says something else. What's the reality here? And so I thought my book was going to take 1 year. It took 3 because it turned into the investigative report, which we're going to talk about next Monday, and which we're discussing to some degree here. We could take all day and go through all of this that made the story what it was.
Okay, so now that you've taken us there, because this is where we want to be, it's pronounced Battle of Ong Thang?
Thang. They stick a G on the end of it for some reason.
Battle of Ong Thang. And Ong Thang, and I didn't know this until we scheduled you. I had to do a little research because I had to teach myself a little bit. That's a river, right? And that's why the battle has the name? Okay.
Yeah. About 23 miles north of Saigon.
Okay, so this would be North Vietnam.
Well, no, I was in South Vietnam.
In South Vietnam, okay.
Saigon, yeah.
So that's how little I know. Okay. So, wow, so the map was wrong, though, when I looked it up. Okay, so tell me, so the presentation you're doing is on Monday over at Top of the World, and it's the Master the Possibilities Education Center. So who are your two guests?
Jim Shelton and Clark Welch. Jim Shelton was, and this is a long story in itself, Jim Shelton was the advisor. He was a major advising a battalion commander in Vietnam. The battalion commander was a rookie. He had just been promoted and assigned his first command. Now, Clark Welch was a company commander, which is a step down from a battalion. And he commanded 150 or so guys. And so what happened was, basically at the beginning, that the Clark Welch's unit was sent out to locate the enemy. They did so. They were looking for an enemy force of about 300 people. They located the enemy. They reported that to the upper people. And a strategy was put together by the top-level military, one general and a couple of colonels. But the battalion commander decided after that he was going to change the battle strategy. Now, Clark, as I say, is going to be one of my people, and he and I are good friends today. He sat in the meeting, and he said, that's not going to work, to himself. couple of people say he muttered to himself a few words that he shouldn't have muttered. And he went up to his boss afterwards and said, "Sir, can we discuss this? This is not the battle plan that was originally discussed. This is not going to," he refused to change it. And he knew right then that there was going to be big trouble. Now, Jim Shelton was the advisor, and about 2 weeks before that battle, he was transferred to another position, and a rookie advisor came in to advise a rookie battalion commander.
Oh,
so you
wow.
can see the ingredients here for real trouble coming up.
And how many guys did we lose in that battle?
58 men were killed,
Wow.
and 75 more were wounded. There were only 14 men that walked out of that battle area unwounded.
So why did that, of all the battles, suddenly turn public sentiment against the war?
Because there were two famous people who were killed in that battle. That made big news. Don Hollader, who I wrote about in my book,
Right.
was one of them.
Right.
He had been an All-American football player. He went to the aid of these men. He knew that there was big trouble. He volunteered to go to the aid of these men. He didn't have to do it. And so his death was newsmaking, to say the least, and heroic also. And that's another whole story in itself. The other famous person that was killed was the battalion commander who made the error. He was killed. He was the son of a very, very famous general in World War II. Terry Allen Sr., Terry Allen, was well-known worldwide in World War II. So his son went to West Point, finished about last in his class, but he was to carry on the legacy of his father. And he was promoted up the line, maybe a little bit too premature. You know, that might have been another factor.
So the public in general knew these two guys. I mean,
so the press showed up in great numbers to find out what had happened in this battle. They might have been able to, sweep it under the rug. Well, then they did attempt to sweep it under the rug. Now, exactly how it came about, that's open to conjecture. Some people say that if this is true, it would go all the way, the seeds of this would go all the way back to the Kennedy assassination. That's when Johnson took over. Kennedy was going to really kind of pull out of Vietnam. Johnson wanted to stay in and escalate the war.
Okay.
Word has it that when Johnson found out about the tragedy, that he said, no, that couldn't have happened, and one way or the other persuaded the top-level military to kind of twist it around a little bit and make it look like a victory. There was some twisting of the truth, and there were a few outright lies.
Oh, really?
Told to the press. And
is
all of this is in my book.
Okay, that's in the book.
Yeah.
But what's the new information? What is in the news release? It says recent information has come to light that spotlights the exact when, how, and why the support began to unravel.
Well, because, and it's partly because it's information that's come to me about Johnson, and I can't say that for
that's the part.
But yeah, that this came from the top level down. Might have been Johnson, it might have been somebody else, but somebody persuaded the military, the top level military, to say, well, that battle was, let me give you a quick example of how they could, we killed 103 of the enemy. Well, the way that they did a body count was they had 3 people go in from the 3 different companies and count bodies. Well, he counted 33, this other guy counted 35, and this other guy counted 31.
Oh, wow.
103 total. Well, could have been
propaganda.
They counted them, a number of them, more than once, maybe 3 times.
So.
The estimate, the real estimate from the people who went in the next day was that they killed about 29.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there was a lot of twisting of the facts. So when, and all anybody has to do, which I did, I went to the media, to the newspapers, the newspaper accounts that were written based on the information that was delivered by the military to the press the day after.
Right.
What they said, based on what really happened, what the truth was that was in the papers subsequent to that, you could see that they were given a bunch of baloney. And the press resented that. I've had a lot of people say, well, yeah, they did that. Oh, no, they didn't. Not up until that. That was the moment That's why I say 10 o'clock in the morning. When that Vietnamese commander knocked his sticks together 3 times, it says in the book, that was the moment that the Vietnam War, as everybody had perceived it, changed forever. And that was the moment.
And what was the year again of that? When 67?
Yeah, 1967,
October
10 o'clock in the morning. That North Vietnamese commander and Clark Welch met each other in Vietnam 30 years after the fact. Mm-hmm. And they met each other, and the Vietnamese commander said, "We were ordered not to attack unless absolutely necessary." His assignment was to pick up rice quantities.
Wow.
And then he was going on to a meeting of top-level North Vietnamese people. They were going to plan the Tet Offensive.
Oh.
And instead of a victory, he was chastised because he was late.
Oh,
meeting.
no.
So what I found out goes far and away deeper, by talking to Clark and Jim and other people, finding out information that nobody else knows. That's what we're going to talk about next Monday.
Wow.
Things that are going to blow people's mind. Other things. Terry Allen Jr., the rookie commander.
Right.
What would a person say? What would you say if I said to you, you have just been made commander of this battalion, but you just got a letter from your wife saying that she is going to sue you for divorce because she's got an affair with another guy at work. You go back, you get an emergency leave, you go home, you love your wife, you love your little girls, you've got to save this marriage. She says, no. I don't want anything more to do with you. I don't want anything more to do with the military. I don't want to have anything more to do with the Vietnam War. I am divorcing you. And he also found out from his lawyer that he is not going to have custody of his 3 little girls, even though she's carrying on an affair because he's a military man and he's away from his home.
Oh, gee.
And the last thing, before he left, he went to see his daughters one more time before going back to Vietnam. One of his little girls ran up to him, grabbed him around the legs and said, "Daddy, please don't go. Please don't go. I know you're going to die."
Oh, my God.
That was his last memory, walking out the door and then flying all the way back to Vietnam. What kind of a emotional state would you be in?
Yeah, wow.
Your military advisor, Jim Shelton, your friend and advisor who knows all the ropes, gets transferred away because there's somebody over there in this other unit that wants him to come and help him. Now you got a rookie commander, another rookie advisor you've got who doesn't know. He was just promoted into his job.
Oh, gee,
but you got to carry on the legacy of your father. You got to stand tall. You got to make decisions on your own. So when Clark goes to him and says, "Sir, I don't know. I don't think that's a good idea." Yes, it is a good idea, and by golly, we're going to go along with it. You got to stand tall and make yourself look like you know what you're doing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know that.
And so, wow. So a turning point in the history of the world was because a woman was filing for divorce. Who knew?
All these things come together. Bam! I mean, it was probably going to happen at some point, because the top Washington tried to dictate a whole lot of what was going. They did dictate a lot. Of rules of engagement, and all of this type of stuff. Right. So it probably was going to happen at some point.
And you know what else it does, Terry? It underscores the important aspect of that same scenario or similar scenarios happening to every single soldier, because every soldier compromises his ability to focus when he gets a letter that's just what's troubling. Anything could have happened. A parent could have died. A child could have been in an accident. And some other wife might have filed for divorce, or maybe they weren't married and she said never mind. It was one of those. What are those letters called when you get a letter? Dear John letters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm guessing that's at the forefront, the story you're telling. But the rank and file guys, they got those letters too.
Yep. I've gotten to know a lot of people involved in this one way or the other.
Which is still true today.
Yep. Doc Bonson, John Doc Bonson, did 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. One as a commanding officer, and his job was to look after a certain area in Vietnam. And his job was to take care and protect the people, particularly the children. He didn't tell them how to run their, how to run their business, although the politicians were beginning to do this. And he wrote a book called An American Warrior, John Bonson. And I read it, and I asked him one day, I said, Doc, I said, how could you run things, and how did everything go so well? He said, I didn't take any bull from anybody. I wasn't going to play politics. I told the people in the village, in the area, you run your village. And don't let anyone, including anybody, tell you what to do. If anybody comes into Viet Cong or otherwise, you tell me and we'll take care of them. They did that. They had nobody telling them what to do. They were happy. Their children were well. And if only that could have been done everywhere, it would be a free country in Vietnam.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there was so much pressure, though, at that time from the celebrities that wanted to have their statements in the newspapers that weren't even soldiers or anything. I mean, then you had that, really horrendous fiasco with Jane Fonda and all those other people, and the newsmen just sort of maybe compromise their scruples.
Oh, yeah, the baby killers, and all of this type of stuff. One of the people who collaborated with Bonson in his book wrote some comments, and one of them ended with a comment like, the soldier, as you've alluded to, was trying to do his job the best he could and avoid having his name put on a wall in Washington that was going to be built in the future, that type of thing.
Okay, the event that you're here to promote is focusing on that event that you just recalled for us with some of the amazing details. The event you're doing on Mondays at 2 p.m. at the Top of the World Master the Possibilities Education Center. Is that a new building?
Well, I guess the whole complex out there, I think, is new.
Okay,
but it's in the main headquarters there, near the golf course, right across the street from the golf course.
Okay.
And there's a restaurant there right nearby, and Sid's Cafe. All of that is right there, and it's in I believe it's in the Live Oak Hall building.
Okay.
Which holds 100 people. I understand we're close to 50 now, so we'd like to have it filled.
So how is this going to be? You're going to be on a stage with the 2 gentlemen?
No, we'll just be up in the front of the room. There's
no
big
stage.
room.
Okay.
Get comfortable chairs. We're scheduled from 2 to 3. I don't know whether we can
questions
get
and
everybody
answers?
out at 3 o'clock, but we'll stay as long as anybody wants to.
And will the people who are there, are they able to ask questions?
Oh, anybody could ask questions. Yep. And we're going to do, the 3 of us are going to do this kind of off the cuff, because we don't know really how the subjects are going to arise. I'm going to kind of keep things together.
Right.
But Jim and Clark really have the story to tell.
Any other survivors around here? How many? You said only 16, right? 16 survivors?
No, there were 75 wounded, and most of them survived.
Okay.
They all survived.
Okay.
A number of them have deceased since then.
Okay. I don't know where I got 16 from.
But as far as I know, those 2 are the only 2 that live in Florida. The only 2 that really have an awareness of the big picture.
Now, Robin mentioned the celebrities jumping on the bandwagon. Is that when that started? Was that the moment when that started?
Oh, I really don't know. I am not an expert on the Vietnam War overall, although I had to do research on the war in general to get knowledgeable enough so that I could put everything into perspective. But I pretty much ignored that part of it anyway.
We had the privilege of meeting Lieutenant Clark and General Shelton. You brought them into the studio, and it was so moving to hear their stories and just to be in their presence, because they're both commanding figures, but they're so emotional. They were so proud to serve, and they're very human. They are very approachable.
And Clark has an entire life story to tell on his own, which we haven't talked about yet on this show. And I would like to have him talk. He escorted the body of the last American killed in Vietnam out of the country back home. This was after the U.S. had pulled out of Vietnam. There was no official American presence there. And they were recovering bodies. And they were attacked by a group of renegades, and his co-leader, they'd hidden down behind, cover. And he says, they're not allowed to do this. We're protected. We've got these vests on. He jumps up and he said, and he took him out and killed him just like that.
Wow.
Somehow they get into the helicopter and get back to the command, and he says to his boss, he says, what are we going to do, with this body? He looks at him, he says, I'm just a mechanic. You take care of it.
Oh.
He had no help, absolutely none, and he had to make it all up. And this was 2 days before Christmas. This story is incredible, I want to tell you.
Terry, you are incredible. Let me tell you why I say that. In addition to what we already heard today, you are one of those people that has an amazing story to tell yourself, and yet you haven't. You've introduced us to amazing people through your writing and in person, as Robin just referred to. We haven't really gotten to know your story, maybe a little bit today for the first time. But I always admire, I think that's kind of a sign of a great journalist, I think, is the journalist who's great somehow leaves the room and you don't know anything about him, but you know a lot about somebody else. And that's what you've done for us. But I enjoy getting to know people, so today we got to know you a little bit.
Well, that sounds great. You flatter me. And if we want to talk about some of these things that I've seen and some of the people that I've met over the years, you've met a lot of interesting people. But it's interesting how you see people as they really are and not what the public mask is. I think it might be interesting.
Yes, right.
For some of your listeners to hear about people like, let's say, Nolan Ryan, Joe Garagiola, some of these people who are well known, but I saw some things that other people wouldn't see.
Yeah,
anyway.
Well, you're always welcome. I always love seeing you, and you are a great storyteller. Another sign of a great journalist. Thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
Thank you for doing this. So again, for the listener, now, is there a fee? How do you do this? Do you pay for this?
Yeah, for non-residents of On Top of the World, it's a $5 charge. I don't think that's going to break anybody. It would be a good idea for somebody to call over there and just make sure. Did I put I think I put the number on there, didn't I?
Yes.
Right
okay.
There.
You want to read it? Want me to read it? 854.
You go ahead.
854. 3699 854 3699. It's Monday, 2 o'clock, Top of the World in the Master the Possibilities Education Center. Robin already has it on Facebook and on the WOCA website, so you can go there to look it up, or you can call us. We'll be glad to talk to you about it.
And thank you, folks, very much for helping to get the word out about this, and thank you for inviting me to be on here. I've enjoyed this immensely.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you. All right, we will take a little break, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to WOCA News Talk 1370, Ocala's source for what's happening in today's hottest, up-to-date news and topics.
Beautiful Moments Party Rentals presents Showcase Under the Stars, a bridal affair to remember. This event has it all. Caterers, photographers, florists, DJs, venues, and more. All gathered in one place, and all there to help you plan your special day.